OOCS Into a Wider Galaxy, Part 291. It's inevitable. The thing about more seasoned and skilled opponents is that they will not be distracted by your appearance. They understand that whether you wear a bra or not, you're still quite capable of causing immense harm, oftentimes even more, such as in the case of bull canidors who grow to be even stronger and larger than their wives for the express purpose of being the final defense for the cubs. Balizen explains as she corrects Terry's form with little taps of her finger. You may be an adorable young man that I wanted to give a treat to and ask about your day, but you're still capable of harm. Granted, not much to me, but you have working hands, a working mind, and if you bend them both to wickedness, then there will be harm. Even a fool can cause a power core to overload or force an airlock open. We all need to breathe, and the amount of energy that goes through a ship's core in the laneways is truly staggering, making it a powerful bomb. It's what killed the Urthani Primal the first time, Harold remarks from where he's sitting on the sidelines. In an approved area or not, Terry was his guest, and so he was obligated to be nearby. First time? He came back, then died again? What's going on? He hasn't died again, but the difference between fully immortal and really hard to kill is both academic and massive. Primals are stupid hard to kill, but not fully immortal. So he's going to die again someday, Harold says. Not really, he was thrown through the realms of death on a rocket made of screaming souls of his enemies' victims. It was there he became a primal and returned, Dumia says. What the... Terry starts a turn to ask and gets a poke in the ribs. And considering that Balizen's delicate-looking nails are far from delicate or blunt, that hurts. It doesn't matter how bad the distraction is. You need to stay in the fight. Balizen chides him. Ow, did you have to get me there, though? Terry asks as he rubs his side. It's a place you need to keep safe, young man. Ribs are good armor for all that they're under the skin. But you may notice that there are these little things called gaps in them. It's not like a skull, which protects at nearly every angle. They need to move, and that movement opens the gaps further, Balizen explains. Yeah, but did you have to point them out that way? If you think you're getting through a fight without hurting yourself in some way, then you're sadly delusional, especially unarmed combat, Giria calls over. Better to just get used to it sooner rather than later. Yeah, but that doesn't mean it doesn't suck, Terry complains. Suck it up, sucker, Uma calls over. Unless you're going to assist, kindly stop interrupting. Balizen notes. You let them interrupt, Uma protests. The chiding is for everyone. Assist or desist, please. Harold's wives glance around a bit, and there's some chuckling and a fierce whispered debate. That might have been the wrong thing to say, ma'am, Harold calls over. So while they're debating, I'll kindly ask what you think you can use my beautiful brides as in your training and conditioning of young Terry. Lady, Balizen calls over. They look at her. All of you at once will be the secondary opposition. I am still the opponent that Terrence will need to concern himself with. But just because you have one enemy doesn't mean that there isn't a whole army's worth of opposition to make things complicated. They're not going to hurt you. Worst you'll need is a nap and a painkiller, Harold calls over before getting up and stretching. I mean, let's be honest, some good sex can lead to that too. Balizen starts to point to Terry, then examines him again. Then she shrugs. You were about to chide me for talking about sex with a child around, weren't you? I'm not that young, Terry protests. No, you're not, but it's easy to forget, Balizen states. Although, technically, you're older than Harold over there. I'm so young, my baby nieces and nephews are rivals in age. And considering I'm working on getting them cousins in their own peer group then... Ow! What the? Terry demands as there's a sudden pain in the back of his head. And you've already failed, Velocity's voice echoes. Hey, that's no fair, no one said start. Unless you're in a spar or a sanctioned fight of some kind, no one ever will, Balizen notes. But I think facing off against an opponent with advanced stealth abilities is a bit much. Very well, Velocity says before slinking away. Balizen tries to make out where she is before frowning slightly. The information packet about a paranoid species having been bioengineered at the edge of a puck space and too frightened to even ask for help had not been pleasant to read through. Still, it wouldn't help anyone to start questioning. So until otherwise commanded, Bali Zen and her fellow princesses were under orders to treat these Vishanyan like they were simply stealthier than average Cloaken. Not that they were willing to be seen as anything else around the Apuk. There were gaps, though. Whatever had been done to and around them had dropped the guard of the two Vishanyans so much that Bali Zen was certain she was maybe 3 questions away from having a legitimate excuse to investigate. But she was under orders not to. The Empress was informed and clearly had some plans in mind. So, yeah, time to have some distraction. But don't worry, Tiny. We won't hurt you. Agatha promises as she heads to the exit. Don't mind me, I just need to get dressed in my combat best. After all, it's never too early to learn just how much a force multiplier power armor is. Uh-oh, Terry notes as he realizes just how much more complicated this is about to get. Sir, incoming communication. Main screen. Captain Rangi states, and the primary display suddenly divides into 9 sections, each one showing a different person. Middle left speaks up. That one is a figure made entirely of transparent yellow gel, with some clothing either floating on or in them. Captain Rangi, I am Commodore Tide. Undaunted reinforcements. I can see you've gotten yourselves out of your scrape. We have. Excellent. However, we will be providing escort to prevent further drama. Your destination remains Albrecht, I hope? It does. Good. Once we're in a system, we will be setting up a defensive cordon. I understand you want something in the way of unpredictability in your investigations, but if it places you at the level of risk you have suffered, then it is no longer permissible, Commodore Tide states. We should have done this sooner. This has been an unacceptable breach. The top right speaking up is an unknown alien, clearly a mammal, but with short, fine fur and tiny streamlined ears. They're clearly no feline, canine, ursine, or primate, but also clearly a mammal, and wearing a huge pearl necklace for some reason, with pearls a full inch across and carved with runes. Having your information untainted is a secondary concern to getting the information in the first place. Yes, well, no one expected us to be physically dragged out of a laneway. Maneuvers like that are wildly considered to be suicidal. They're considered suicidal not because they're difficult. With computer assistance, even a fist-time pilot can perform such maneuvers, but because the consequence for failure is instant death for 2 vessels, and the shrapnel possibly spelling the doom for any others in the area until the shrapnel is expelled naturally from the lane. And there are also reports of this expelled shrapnel causing immense damage to stations and ships beyond the laneways. Impact craters have been found on worlds as the objects of terror or worship to primitive peoples. My own being but one of them mere millennia ago. Calm yourself, Captain Kassam. We are here now, and will be presenting a defensive formation around the inevitable. We will not be requesting headings beyond general directions to preserve the collection of your data. However, some of this escort will not be following, depending on your destination after Albrecht, for we are in part composed of a routine supply run. What form of supplies? I will answer that. A man with a head of feathers styled as hair states. I am Captain Schrichtalon. I and my ship, the Bloody Heron, will be the part breaking off afterwards. I am transporting soldiers to Albrecht as a world under undaunted protection and picking up recruits to return to Zalwar for training. I am willing to delay my delivery by up to a week to reinforce the escort, but I will not be deviating my route. Understood, Captain Schrichtalon. Are there any other peculiarities I should be made aware of? Captain Rangi asks. Only in that 3 of our ships have a more boarding than bombardment strategy when it comes to enemy vessels. After all, ships are valuable, they're best taken intact, Commodore Tide explains. I will be transferring over an outline of our battle strategies so you can understand the full procedure if and when we are attacked next. Understood, Commodore. I'm glad to have you and your fleet with us, Captain Rangi states. Incidentally, if you have the time and crew, I would like to send over some reports and blueprints we've come up during our visit to the Vinok Nebula. See if your boys can't spot any obvious mistakes we've made or concluded. Of course. Do you mind if we also channel this information to the rest of the Undaunted as well? We have secure lines. I do not mind. The information we're here to gather and protect is unrelated to the information that we've developed on the RAD and Considering how accommodating the Undaunted have been to us during all of this, it's only fair we be open and willing to share. Captain Rangi states and Commodore Tide nods. Then I look forwards to it. Are there any other questions before we take full formation? Only one of mild curiosity. Ask it. I am unfamiliar with Captain Kasim's species. I am a proud Tyrol, BMC 1 to 100, number 57. 2,085 years ago, my people were discovered during the cleanup of a laneway incident in the late Bronze period of our development. Really? Yes, the interesting part is that we had already found the shrapnel of the destroyed spaceship, and were trying to determine exactly what it was. The impact of the debris had been felt all over the planet, and it had led to numerous wars being put on hold as adventurers were sent to discover what had shaken the entire planet. It was the first moment of true peace between the tribes. Remarkable. Yes, in all ways we are, Captain Kasim says proudly. His hand, covered with a purple film, stops the fist dead. There is a pause to the chaos. Figured out a trick, Harold asks. I think so, but I don't know. There's been a lot of purple in my life, Terry says. Color is based on perception, child. Balizen advises him, and he thinks. Wait, yeah, it is about what light bounces off. So if none does, Terry reasons, and the purple film over his hand suddenly darkens until it's darker than black. Whoa! That actually really helped it too. The Vanta black spreads over Terry's body until he's a shadow cut out of reality. Bit too intense there. With that kind of darkness, you stand out more than ever, Harold calls over. So what if Terry muses before he brightens, for lack of a better term. He's still pitch black, but he seems to be blending and matching. The Kogas are very interested in this. They would be, they're ninjas, Harold replies, and then after a moment, there is a pair of spots of white light to illuminate where Terry's eyes are. Yes, very interesting, but are they any more or less protected from? Agatha begins to ask as she sends a probing finger to poke at the eye markings on Terry's improvised armor. He flinches back. So they are more vulnerable. Something to watch out for. They're just as tough, but I can see clean through it. You're still going for my eye. Oh, fair enough. I suppose it is like a first-time armor user seeing something coming for the camera, Agatha says. So it's protective and strong. Think you can add more tricks to your little suit? Maybe. This is really new. New or not, armor is a good thing to base a combat style around. I suppose a Crimson Hewer would know that better than most, Balizen notes. OOCS into a wider galaxy, Part 292. It's inevitable. There's a slight delay in the pickup. Do you have the wrong frequency? This is Captain Schreiktalan of the Bloody Heron. No, you are who I've been looking to speak with. Are your current duties light enough to perform safely while answering some questions? Observer Wu asks. They are. But why would you wish to speak with me, Observer? From my understanding, your concerns are with the humans and the theoretical treachery they have committed, Jacob asks. Primarily, yes, but you are employed by them and are also in a position to answer several interesting questions I possess. So I ask again, are you too busy to safely answer my questions? Our coordinates are currently locked in. I can't leave the bridge, but I can answer you questions from the controls. Do you mind if I start by asking a question or two of my own? I've looked you up, and there's a few things that are odd. I wasn't aware that I had any information like that available. It's your name, Damien Wu. That's a mismatch of human naming conventions. One that could be explained if you were a mixed race like myself, but you're not from my understanding. Or if you are, it's not with a culture that would use the name Damien, Jacob says, and Observer Wu nods. It's similar to a stage name. My proper name, while dignified in my native language, says something rather silly in the English language, and translating it directly is a little long. So rather than going through the silliness of constantly explaining to people that I was not named after an extinct species of bird or an idiot, I took another name, and generally go by my family name. But I have the proper paperwork so that Damien Wu refers to me legally. I see. I'll not pry then. What do you want to know? Two things. As much of the circumstances that led to your employment with the Undaunted as you're permitted to tell me, and how the galaxy generally looks at concepts such as peace or pacifism. First one is going to take a bit and some careful wording. However, so long as you're visiting Zalwar, you should get a much better and more complete answer from the Shriktalan Enclave there. I'm a very odd Shriktalan, a reminder of older times rather than anything modern. Could you explain that then? There's not much to explain. The Shriktalans are descendant from the most vicious Valran tribes. We were so vicious we almost got our species cordoned off and contained rather than uplifted. Of course, when the other tribes made peaceful alien contact, they came back with a vengeance. And rather than genociding us, they got an oath of peace instead, which holds for most Shriktalans to this day. But not with you. It's hard to hold to your cultural heritage when it's been ripped from you and you can't remember it. I had at first assumed that Shriktalans were like the stereotype I heard of when I looked into my own heritage. But I was thankfully proven wrong. Not that there aren't some over-the-top, insane militant pacifists, but in general societies that are peaceful or pacifistic are more patient, not helpless. They do not start any conflict and never pursue one beyond the minimum force needed to defend themselves. Of course, not being warriors or soldiers, they can rather bad at telling where that line is, which can prolong wars or lead to massacres, Jacob explains. I see, I was worried about suicidal pacifism, but doesn't it concern you that your entire race, which in this context I mean your general genetic group among your species, is known to be in a position where they're not going to fight properly? And what is the proper way to fight, Jacob asks. Should we lay magnetic plasma mines around the systems we call home so that no one who isn't already a friend is dead when they show up? It wouldn't even involve lifting a weapon or even aiming at someone. Or maybe we should have some kind of attack beast, tame some kind of hostile space fauna so that they avoid attacking certain ships. Then have them just maul everyone and everything that they don't recognize, Jacob asks. It is what some people mean, though. While the version the Shriktalans ascribe to can be described as very defensive, others can be described as isolationist or suicidal. Although the more reasonable pacifists of my people are generally the most common, that said, there are entire systems that are closed off. Any good astrogation map will point them out, and there are systems that are entirely reliant on their neighbors for defense, sometimes even for basic policing. They think that refusing to stand up for themselves with anything other than words is noble. Madness. It sounds like you've had a bad encounter. Some Shriktalan enclaves are like that. Most are reasonable, but every now and then you find idiots. The type that think that the moment you pick up a weapon, you become just as bad as whatever lunatic is trying to murder you. Doesn't matter that they started it and you're moving entirely in defense of yourself or others. Something vaguely sharp or heavy enters your hand, and boom, you're just as bad. It's insane. Let me tell you, it's interesting to see their faces contort when they hear my story. Some keep condemning me after that, but they can tell they're being unreasonable. And what is that story? I can't give you names. You probably know a few already, so the broad strokes I can explain will fill in blanks you have. But please don't tell me what you already know. I'm staring down the barrel of a lot of legal trouble as is. Whatever you feel safe with sharing, Observer Wu says, and Jacob nods. Well, what I can say is that my first run through life saw me to adulthood and then into debt. I was addicted to schleppa, and it drove me into isolation and debt. So I made a deal and was instantly on the wrong side of it. I was reverted to a child and forced into prostitution. What? Child prostitution. To make it worse, they constantly used healing comas without protection to ensure I would forget and heal from anything. I have some memory of what happened, but ironically, one of the memories is my old addiction to schleppa. I can almost taste it some days. How did you escape child prostitution? If you couldn't even remember what happened, then how? Basically, one of the women watching me and the others looked away at the right moment. I was a handful at that age and hid. While hiding, I snuck around and overheard some hints of what was going on. I got scared and found a way to run. Being a Valran, Jacob says, holding up his left wing and extending it to show that he definitely has them. I can fly. With flight as my gift, I was able to get away, and I dedicated the next 2 decades of my life to tearing them down, to saving the others, and I got close. But I didn't know the full extent I was hitting one facility, but there were more. That's when I encountered the Undaunted. They stopped me and blurred my trail. It turns out my fight wasn't alone, but I was about to ruin their plan. And what happened afterwards? We joined forces and tore them apart, but I was only allowed in the operation if I was willing to play ball. So I signed up, and now here I am, a captain, mostly due to coming with a ship all my own. And I'm receiving advanced combat training. I can hit an area at blinding speeds and drench it in plasma and laser bombardment. But I want more. And the others that were rescued? Many of them had families to go back to. A byproduct of healing comas being used properly. A lot of distant dreams were fulfilled that day. But people aren't immortal. I see. Maybe you do. If I say, bright forest, does that mean anything to you? It does. Good, because I have said as much as I safely can. I'm no expert in contract or legal affairs, so I'm cutting it off there. Hopefully you've gotten a big enough picture. Yes. And how have the Undaunted been handling the delicate parts of your situation? Mandatory therapy. It's a good and bad thing in my case. I want to remember, I want all of it. But it's not pleasant in coming to terms with what I remember. Well, I did say it's not pleasant. I see. Thank you for speaking with me, Captain Ch.291. Right. I'm going to be turning on some music after this. If you call again, well, I don't expect you to understand it, but it's going to be loud. Jacob warns him, and Observer Wu nods. Very well, thank you again for speaking with me. I understand that these topics are sensitive, and that it takes a great deal to speak on them. Well, you don't get these kind of things done without facing them, but I do have another question. And that is, what if this isn't enough, Jacob asks. Enough for what? Your homeworld. I haven't had more than a few glances at those extra orders, but the fact remains that the systems that gave those orders sent you. So what if they survive? What if they endure and lie, and stay in power? What happens if your report does not change a thing? Is Earth going to declare war on the Undaunted? I doubt they'd be that stupid. Well, for the sake of consideration, consider this. If Earth is so run by fools as to declare war, or try to punish the Undaunted, in what capacity can they possibly retaliate? Earth's orbit is known. It's in reach, but it has a very, very hard time reaching back, doesn't it? It does. Then they'd best remember that. Are you implying you'd do something? I might. I'm a throwback to the old savages of the Shriktalons. I've learned violence. I have a talent for it, a taste for it. I'm the type that doesn't look out for trouble, but looking for an excuse to make it. Are you threatening Earth? The answer to that is the same as the one to this question. Is Earth a threat to the Undaunted? Thank you for your time, Captain Ch.291. You have given me much to think about. I'm sure, just remember, I'm not the only vicious bastard whose only link to your mudball is the people that you were sent out to potentially persecute. Then Captain Ch.291 closes the link, leaving Observer Wu with his thoughts. There is a long, low whistle from outside his office. Well, that ended on an intense note. Harold, out of my office, Observer Wu snaps. I am out of your office. I have some notes here for you and was waiting for your interview to end, Harold says as the door opens, and he has a data slate in his hands. Observer Wu takes a deep breath and lets out slowly as Harold places the slate on his desk. And when Wu's eyes open again, he glares at Harold right in the blank eyes. Are you organizing this madness? Are you trying to make my head explode? No, I'm not. It's part of something you might not have picked up on yet. And that is the gender divide. I'm well aware. The fact that I have to run a scanning program through my messages so I'm not sifting through an endless sea of unsolicited nude imagery is something I'm painfully aware of. That's part of it. But there's the other side. The men being hired into the Undaunted, and they are getting preferential training and hiring opportunities. They come from a life you and I can scarcely imagine. But they are listless, draining lives that leave no purpose, no brotherhood, less community. We give them all these things and more. It makes them very loyal. Jacob's a little more extreme than normal because we helped him through a cultural crisis as well, and he just showed that loyalty in his own way. Even if the humans of the Undaunted were to simply surrender on command, the rest would mount a rescue, wouldn't they? Most likely. Pride, fellowship, purpose, accomplishment, these are valuable things, and we've given them to many, Harold says, and Observer Wu sighs and holds his head in his hands as he thinks. What were the notes you've brought? Just an update to the movements of the sorcerers and the guests on the inevitable. A few patterns I've noticed that aren't a security risk, but they show that even in isolated and unusual cases, like this, certain social constructs keep reappearing. I thought it was something you might want to add to your ever-growing report, Harold explains. Yes, thank you. Please leave, Observer Wu says, and Harold nods before turning and exiting his office in near silence, leaving Observer Wu in silence as he tries to sort his thoughts. So he does the only thing he can think of. He replays the interview and listens again. OOCS Into a Wider Galaxy, Part 293. It's inevitable. They were most of the way to Albrith already. It had taken Observer Wu some time, and then a bit of reorganization once he had the full revelation of just how intense the loyalty of the undaunted aliens is. Then came the realization that he'd need to have many more such interviews to really drive this point home. One extreme example is a lot, and confirmation from Harold is enough for Wu, but it wouldn't be enough for some people. So he would need at least a few more examples, preferably from a variety of different sources, and thankfully he had not only a few immediately present, but would likely soon have a few more. He has another interview to do, and he has been waiting for a few moments for an answer. The screen activates. Captain Chasm, thank you for answering. Are you busy at the moment? A very loaded question, however, my crew is more than capable enough to allow us to speak. Do you intend to interview me as well? Yes, my recent interview with Captain Schrichtelon allowed me to see just how lacking I have been by not interviewing more non-human Undaunted. It is time I rectify that, and I do have several questions about your people and your place in an opinion of the Undaunted. All right, I'm a recent hire, though. I signed on last week, so while I do enjoy being a part of this, I am not the best to ask about Undaunted opinion. And yet you're a captain already? If one comes with a ship, then they get the rank of captain. The Undaunted are not thieves, but if you want to be paid a full captain's salary, then you have to pass their tests, and I have. And how did you earn your ship? I understand that many men live rather quiet lives, Observer Wu asks, and Captain Chasm twists until he's showing his bottom and tail. Do you see something there? Captain Chasm asks. I don't have the cultural context to understand what I'm seeing beyond your bottom and tail. It's what you are not seeing. Marriage pearls are worn by the husband upon the tail. I have none, Captain Chasm says before shifting back into his proper seating position. Unlike my brothers and cousins, I am a warrior. The only pearls I hold are pearls of victory, only 5 of which are taken from Vathia clams, and now I hold 53. And you earned the others in what manner? One at a time between hunts for criminals. My people consider the Tural pearls sacred, so there is at times some reluctance from the wider galaxy to hunt criminals who carry them. We have a reputation for not reacting well to non-Turals with what is ours. And what about them makes them yours? Why are they so important to your people? They are the one thing that every people of my people valued. Even a promised son might not be as valuable as a pearl. The son can betray you, fail you, or simply die. A pearl does none of these things. A pearl simply empowers those that hold it. If it cannot empower you, then it is a false pearl. Simple, no? I'm not sure how gathering a pearl can be seen as some great feat, though. They are certainly of impressive size, meaning they likely come from a very large animal. But what about these Vathia clams makes them so impressive? On their shells there are markings. These markings detect changes in light or sudden sounds and send out spears of compressed water outwards, hence the translated name of spear clams. Merely swimming near one can result in the death of any man or woman foolish enough to pay no attention to the seafloor. To harvest them, You have to weave within the currents of death, either dodging the spears or with such guile and cunning that no spear is sent your way, and that is merely approaching the clam. Harvesting the pearl without killing it is another matter entirely. I earned my first 3 through stealth, the next 2 through courage. Then I sought greater tests and began my hunt for the cruel and twisted. He fingers a few pearls and smiles. You'd be surprised at just how many of the fools let their guard down because their foe is a man. I only ever took 1 pearl from each, and indeed some only had 1 pearl. But after I had earned so many, my foes began taking me much more seriously, and a few even sought me out, looking to make a prize out of me. Nearly half this necklace is from would-be suitors who could not withstand my might. I am a proper pearl priest from the olden days. Pearl priest? There is an enormous amount of cultural understanding missing. But to be as succinct as possible, a pearl priest is a tested man who is religious in his pursuit of strength. We are considered the ultimate treasures of our tribes, and by the old traditions, it is only though through the unison of the chiefess daughter and greatest warriors to a pearl priest can 2 tribes be united. Anything less is a potential insult to the other side. And you, are you seeking to unify 2 tribes? Someday, but not yet. At the moment, I seek self-betterment, and the Undaunted offer that. And before you ask, I signed up because it's one of the only martial groups in the galaxy that isn't religious-based or about to relegate me into the support role. I am not a comforter, I am not a mascot or a distraction. I am an axiom warrior. And finding yourself treated as a warrior and respected as one by fellow warriors is a heady brew. I would be spending time with the Undaunted for no pay, but to be one of them and be paid for it? And all I must do to earn this is to improve as a warrior? They granted me greater skill with kinetic weapons, paid me for the privilege, and upgraded my ship, again paying me to do it. Captain Chasm explains before drawing a pistol. This weapon uses no axiom, none, yet it has tri-tight jacketed rounds to puncture the defenses of an adept. I would need to either dodge or have a physical barrier between myself and this bullet to avoid being killed by it. An excellent weapon, and they just gave it to me. All I have to do is maintain it. He then holsters the pistol and rolls up his left sleeve. There is a discoloration on his fur there, one that resembles a familiar symbol. They is a defensive brand they offer. There is no punishment for refusing it, but they trust in the resilience of their soldiers so highly that we are permitted axiom brands. That level of faith in my resilience is something no one else has ever offered me. Not even myself. They have shown more faith in me than I have. That is astounding. I'm not sure it's quite like that. Whatever it's like, I am stronger. That is my goal. I have reached it within my first week. My contract is for 5 years. Just consider that. My goal is met in less than 1% of the allotted time. I see, most impressive. Anything else? Just a quick question as to the exact phrasing you used about the situation revolving around first contact with your species. You claimed that an impact was felt around the entire world, but the sheer force to do that would scar a continent irreparably, set off several volcanoes, and require a piece so large as to not burn up in the atmosphere? Yes, that is what happened. I was under the impression that ships that crash into each other at laneway speeds shatter, that the pieces are small and all the more dangerous for it as smaller pieces scatter wide. Generally, yes, but there are times when extremely metal-heavy asteroids are discovered beyond the reach of an operation that can safely mine them. They get tethered and towed to a processing yard. A gigantic chunk of stack, one of the component elements of Kutha, at 80% purity, is such a prize. I cannot recall the lot number it was assigned, but when a collision in the lane sent shrapnel into the controlling vessel, a stack asteroid 4 kilometers wide was sent hurtling into wild space. Its trajectory was tracked and followed, only to find nothing there. Then they traced potential planets it might have impacted, and we were found. So how did your people take it at the time? We were trying to understand what this never-before-seen metal was, and what exactly the symbol on top of it was. We learned it was not actually a symbol. It was the part gouged out so that a stabilizing engine could be installed. It's just that the engine was destroyed in the re-entry, or possibly in the initial impact, or secondary. The details like that got caught up in the first contact scenario and the frantic scramble to stop multiple species from going extinct. To say nothing of the climate damage. By the time the outer galaxy reached us, the world had already chilled by 5 degrees with the unending clouds in the sky. You narrowly avoided an ice age. We didn't avoid it, but we did blunt it and we did shorten it. What would have been a chill that would have grown into a deep freeze, which would have lasted millennia, was reduced to less than a century and kept to a mere chill. Thanks to the diligence of numerous parties, we were able to preserve the plants and animals that would have gone extinct otherwise. That was the only time Tyrrell pearls were ever undisputably won by those without a drop of Tyrrell blood. Truly remarkable. Do you know what happened to those pearls? They are held in a display case along with a piece of the asteroid. A plaque beneath them reads, "More valuable than what lies within is the rewards of duty. To save a world is to save a people." Remarkable. Where are they? They are actually on Centris, in the main council building, the Hall of Charitable Works, a commemorative museum to the organizations, past and present, that have dedicated themselves to caring for the galaxy. I understand it's just been reopened and is available to the public once again. I will have to visit when I finally end up on Centris. And when will that be? I understand you were there already, Captain Kasem asks. When it's most appropriate. They knew we were coming when we first arrived at Centris. They would have time to get control of the situation. But by moving from location to location without much rhyme or reason, I can put people off balance and get a more honest view of things. Which has downsides, Captain Kasem notes. Every option does. I made the choice I thought was best for my mission, Observer Wu says. I'm simply glad it hasn't cost anyone their lives. Some age and perhaps a relationship waiting back on Earth. But I can live with that. And would that bit of honesty have been worth it if the price was lives? Captain Kasem asks with a smile. Potentially, but as it hasn't been paid, we may never truly know. Excellent dodge. You certainly would do well when speaking to the political, Captain Kasem says with a smirk. Now, is there anything else? I can inform you about the honored history of my own tribe. How we stood out for our ferocity and guile, how our courage eclipsed all others and could not be disputed. Thank you, but I think I have taken enough of your time already, Captain. Thank you for indulging me. In other words, no, but you're trying to be polite. Very well, Observer Wu. Enjoy your day. Then the link is closed, and Wu leans back in his seat to consider. South, the Tyrrell species stared extinction right down the throat and only got out due to the assistance of the wider galaxy. Or perhaps with their pearl priests and skills with Axiom, they would find some way to adapt? Would they have? Perhaps they would have developed into a walrus or seal-like people to survive. Who can say with this crazy galaxy where ottermen are competed for with gigantic sacred pearls? Or a simple mining operation can nearly destroy planets. OOCS into a wider galaxy, Part 294, The Bounty Hunters. The small amount of axiom he needs to use to levitate the tool is an easy thing to use now. The device is basically a tiny spot welder that fuses a couple of pieces of metal together, and he needs to use the axiom-based levitation. He's working on his arm, adding a few little extra tricks. You need to give it another pass there, darling, Cindy says, and he looks down at his work, his cyborg eyes zooming in to see what he missed. Just trust me, it's about the way the weld settled, not the color or pattern. As you say then, he says as he passes the welder over the piece. All right, let's see if it can activate. Sending a signal to the implant he has incorporated into his shoulder still feels a little funky, but it's a direct upgrade to his previous methods, allowing him to easily swap in and out arms. And this final test was just about ready, but for it, he needed all the arms. So they were working on this. The sound of a slight amount of fussing gets everyone to pause, and little George settles back down. He occasionally does that. He's a fussier napper than Daruda. Litha gently rocks him in the floating crib that blunts sounds coming into the little baby for a peaceful rest, but still lets them all hear if there's anything wrong. So you think a six-pack of multi-purpose arms is a good idea? Slytherin asks, and Gregory shrugs ever so. The Nagasha teenager had taken to wearing a pure white half mask with slight indents near the left side and bottom. It covered his scars and was most easily removed with his cybernetic fingers. A way to lean into his idea of founding a noble house. Also, it did double duty as armor. There was a tri-tite-based alloy just under the ceramic layer of that mask. There has been some debate on whether to call him Phantom or Opera now, a debate that was still ongoing. It can't hurt. So long as the storage and install method is functional, it would be a good way to get around people that target prosthetics when they attack. Not to mention people tend to be harder on cybernetic limbs than physical ones. The sheer surprise of having one spare might be enough to make people think again. Also, the fact you're putting different tools and weapons on each one is a big thing, Slytherin adds. Yep. To say nothing of the fact that a lot of scanners are already known to be easily baffled by prosthetics with incorporated weapons. Not that you need it. Mr. punched a hollow daughter in the face, Cindy says. Oh yeah, that was over this world, wasn't it? Slytherin asks. How could you forget? Litha asks. A lot has happened. A whole heck of a lot has happened. Slytherin protests. Some of it I'm not even legally allowed to talk about, and wait, I'm not technically a citizen of the Apuk Empire, and I'm not totally sure where their laws interact with fleet-born or foreign nobility. Well, even if you aren't being restricted, do you want the hassle of making a legal enemy? Pukey asks. Well, it could be good practice, Slytherin says in a joking tone. Speaking of practice, let's see how this bit has turned out. Pukey says as he starts sending commands through the implant in his shoulder, and the arm starts flexing and then shifting. Then the hand contorts and the fingers begin forming numerous different tools before turning around to show a plasma launcher that can do double duty as a powerful cutting torch. Looks functional, Slytherin says. And it seems to be completely up to standards, Cindy says as Pukey picks up the arm and connects it to his shoulder port. Then suddenly the arm shifts to a pure white arm that then makes a sudden sound like a blade being unsheathed. But only Pukey's organic eye can see the pale blade extending from the arm. That works. He retracts the blade and checks the articulation around the arm. Anti-adept arm seems to be fully functional. Let's see how the pummeler is working. Slytherin snorts at the name, even as the massively reinforced arm appears. It's basically a pile bunker fist, the ultimate door opener, and a way to send power-armored foes on a trip over the horizon. The reinforced knuckles have the word pummeler in raised bolts. I don't think we should test that one on board. We might hit something vital, Cindy notes, to say nothing of who else might get hit by shrapnel. Yes, please do not do that, Herika says as she enters the chamber. Sorry to crowd the room, but the inevitable has arrived in system. Have they? Well, that's a few bets I need to collect, Pukey remarks. You all right? You look stressed. Are you not worried? Even if Observer Wu takes one look at me and declares that I have committed every sin a human is capable of, and several others he just discovered, he's an observer. He needs to report back to Earth first before anything happens. And the edge of cruel space is being watched for more the inattentive or suicidal now. If anyone shows up after they head home, we will hear about it well ahead of time. Pukey explains as he shifts his arm into the next configuration. This one seemed completely unassuming, but it's synchronized with his eye and had numerous short-range transceivers along its length. It could not only synchronize with any gun, giving him improved aim, but it could also be used to hack systems. Granted, Bike was better than him at that, and Litha made them both look like rank amateurs. But it's always nice to have options. I don't think he'd be that bad anyways. I've spoken to Mother and my sister. They've met him and he was perfectly cordial. If anything, he seemed fascinated in Lisa's latest upgrade into a drone swarm. Litha notes. Maybe fascinated is the wrong word. I didn't get the impression he was the type for that, Pukey says as the hacker arm shifts configuration and several tethers lash out from the forearm. They're designed to hook into any system they need to and feed power in. They're reinforced to make melee-range tasers, but they can give a drained plasma cannon a couple more shots or bring life back to a computer cut off from its power source. Well, she did have a good impression either way, Litha says as Puke's arm shifts out for the next one. Much sleeker than the others, it seems to be only a metal replacement for his normal arm. In fact, it seems to have no axiom running through it at all. The only place that axiom seems to be is right where it joins the shoulder, and it converts axiom into electricity to power an otherwise completely axiom-free arm. It doesn't seem to hold its charge after going into storage. No, and that's going to be a problem. I'll need to figure out how to maintain its charge or swap well in advance of a possible null event. Still, if someone is looking for axiom, this will mostly fool them, or at least be harder to sense. Pukey remarks as he tests its rotation and moves it a bit. Not as responsive, and I can't feel through it, beyond basic sense of how I've moved it. He then trades it out for a final arm with multiple spikes along its side. He gives them a yank to reveal that each spike is in fact the hook of a grappling hook, and the whole arm is built for maximum mobility, and also functioning as a series of rope darts and jagged spears if he wants. The real trick to his arm, though, is that the fingers were the same, each one an arrow he can launch at his leisure. All told, he has 10 spikes on the arm, each finger, the thumb, one aiming over the top of his hand like a proper hook, the other 4 going out the side of his forearm. The thing that brings it all together is that it's all sealed in just such a way as to work underwater. Using lasers or plasma in fluids is just asking for a flash steaming. You need kinetics, but the speeds of coil, rail, and even chemically propelled rounds means the bullets are hitting a solid surface. But these darts, they'll work just fine. They all have full mobility, and we should be off the ship when we actually test the more interesting parts of the arms. But it looks like it's working. Shouldn't we be going to the bridge, though? If the inevitable is here, then they're going to want to call. Yes, I was about to get to that. I have to take a break from having fun and be serious now. I hope you can all forgive me. What you think we're going to let you get away? Cindy asks, and Gregory raises an eyebrow as the tiny woman climbs up onto the table and nuzzles against him. No, we're in this together. Carry me? Prepare to be carried, Pukey says as he switches to the less spiky hacking and interface arm, also to see if the slight humming it gives out has any effect as he carries Cindy. Sir, we've reached the Albrecht system. There's a great deal of IFFs and traffic in the area, and another undaunted signature, the Chainbreaker. One of the roving groups, right? Captain Rangi asks. One of the earliest loose leash protocol recipients. The ship they're on used to be the Chaining, a brutal slaver ship. Its current captain was the man they managed to get from us before he broke out and took the entire thing by force, losing an arm and eye in the process. If you see a code woman with him, she's the doctor that got him his replacements, and if you see a scarred Nagasha boy, then you'll see the second survivor of the Chaining that's currently undaunted, Harold says. I have read the briefings, Captain Rangi states. Oh, considering the recent drama, I assumed it might be a little rusty, Harold replies. We've had a few days to wind down. I got familiar again. All right, I'm going to prep the saber. Actually, Herbert, but I agree with this. Want to check out this world and see with my own eyes how it's coming back together. This is one of the few places ever hit by a human chemical weapon. I want to see how it reacted. All right, just remember to file a proper flight plan when you leave. And if your guest shows up during that time, considering that I plan to fly him to a potential family reunion with an environmental activist as part of this, I don't think that's going to be a problem. Harold remarks, and Captain Rangi nods. Sir, we have incoming communications from the rest of our convoy. On screen, Captain Rangi states. Captain Rangi, we are sending you our patrol routes. However, you will be approaching Albrecht alongside the Bloody Heron. Will there be any issues with this? None, but a smaller ship, the Sabre, will be launching from us after we're in range of Albrecht. Mine, Harold says, holding up a hand. I see. That is no issue, Commodore Tide states. Great, I'll get to prepping. No doubt Observer Wu will have much to say to the Chainbreaker and her crew, Harold says with a wave. By your leave, sir. Dismissed, Captain Rangi says, and Harold walks off the bridge. The door to the embassy opens and Harold steps in. Mr. Jameson? The princess sitting there asks as she looks up from the novel she was reading between the paperwork of her job. Hello, Terry is not on the ship. Mind if I shout at the bit of nebula stuff? Couldn't you ask a sorcerer or call him on your communicator? That's plan 2 and 3. I want to see if the funny option works, Harold remarks. You know what? I want to see this, she says, indicating a closed-off part of the embassy where there is a clear glass wall that contains a purple-dusted area, and it's so thick on the ground that it looks solid. Harold taps on the glass a few times. Hey, Terry boy, we're at Albrecht. Want to hunt down your uncle and see if you can't surprise him with a family reunion? Get your tracking skills up and see if he's as big and bad as your parents have hinted at. There is a contortion in the axiom, and for a moment there's an almost completely transparent Terry in his armor inside the contained area. Then he's gone. What are you doing? Terry asks from behind him. That glass do something to you? Something like that, Harold says, turning around and grinning. That was pretty slick, though, and you've learned to pull back the suit in a hurry. It burns time when I'm nervous and waiting. OOCS, Into a Wider Galaxy, Part 295, The Bounty Hunters. None of them could really say anything. It had only been a short amount of time, not even a year, but the whole place was almost completely unrecognizable. The power of those terrible things that had held their world hostage had destroyed the preservation runes on the buildings, letting them fall into disrepair. Grass and weeds poked up from the cracked roads and sidewalks. Windows were smashed in, and if not for that, then the whole place would smell of death and rot. But instead it was all just eerily quiet, a place where life was just no longer present, despite it clearly being here, with some wild birds nesting in the buildings. She had broken away from the rest of the group and found her way to the old family home and started digging through it, looking for something to remember things by. What had been built here was dead, but it doesn't need to be forgotten. She slithers up the spiraling ramp on the inside and then down an old familiar but now so very foreign hallway. She freezes at the half-open door, not wanting to open it, not wanting to look inside. Then she resolves herself and forces her way in. The room is badly damaged. Fire tends to do that, even small and contained ones. She slumps down onto her tail as she takes it in, just quietly watching as she tries to come to grips with the loss, even if she is comparatively lucky next to pretty much anyone else. She just sits there for a few moments, memories, pain, and indecision flowing over her. Then without a word, Mariko of the Sidewinder Street Sisters, now an undaunted private attached to the chainbreaker, slithers forward to collect the still pristine necklace from the charred corpse of her grandmother. A little touch of axiom, and it gently unlatches and floats into her hands. She looks down at it and then back up at what was once the woman she adored more than anything. At the woman she had been about to leave her friends behind to appease. You were wrong, grandmother. They didn't drag me down. They lifted me up, she says with tears in her eyes, but they're not falling. She looks down at the pendant she has taken, and whatever other words she has are simply lost. But she has to say something, anything. I'm sort of courting a young man. He's a Nagasha boy, cute, where he's not covered in scars. I can barely remember why I was upset at you that day. Part of me thinks I should have just given you what you wanted sooner to avoid you becoming this while we were on bad terms. But if I did that, I wouldn't have made it out. Funny, isn't it? Words fail again, so she tries to force something else out. You know, it's kind of crazy, but we got lucky with how you died. Those things ate people, but you were too charred to digest. Primals, that's a messed up thing to say. I can field strip and maintain all sorts of... Why would you care about that? What am I doing here? I've got the stupid thing and you're gone. You can't hear me. It's over, it's done, and it's too late to regret. Even if I was brave enough to look into death itself, something would try to eat me if I did. She just trails off and sits there, trying to figure out what to say. It takes a while. I'm sorry I wasn't a better granddaughter, but I'd be dead if I was, not courting nobility or saving lives. You wouldn't be able to believe what I've been doing and what I'm becoming. But that's fair, because some days I don't believe it either. Terry stumbles as the saber takes off. I told you to hold on to something. Harold rebukes him gently as he sits in the co-pilot's seat. Demaya wanted to fly, and he was letting her. Sorry, This is big, you know, Terry asks. I do, but having a stupid accident and walking out with a bruise on your face is a bad first impression, Harold remarks. The massive hand of Agatha comes down and pushes Terry against a wall. If you can't sit, then lean. Right, yeah, okay, Terry acquiesces. Oh, relax, will you, kiddo? Warriors aren't stupid, and if your uncle is a warrior, he'll know when you're close to your limits, and he'll know when to pull a shot, Javra says. But he's a bounty hunter and conservationist, not a warrior. Bounty hunters are warriors, boy, just like big game hunters are warriors, and soldiers are warriors, and even the little rental cops you find patrolling malls are warriors in their own way. First thing any warrior learns is if something is a threat or not. They might not be good at it, but they all learn it. And your uncle is one, and in a way, so are you now. You're learning, but you're on the path. Does it end? No, Giria answers him now. Even my ancestress, one of the primal goddesses of war, still seeks to grow stronger. That's a woman that responded to me hitting her with a point-blank, reversed grazer bombardment with mild amusement. Grazer. Yes, as in a gamma radiation laser. Yes. And bombardment, meaning it was designed to be used from a spaceship to scour a planet of life. Yes. Point blank. She was all but standing on the muzzle of it when I set it off. It amused her. Okay, how do you reverse that? He had a single-shot Grazer bombardment cannon buried under the battlefield they were fighting on and pointed upwards. He set it off when they were both in range, Giria says, and Harold grins back at the staring and shocked Terry. And when is that lesson? Terry demands in shock. To be fair, it's not a legit combat technique. It's rigging the battlefield in your favor and having a blatant disregard for safety and sanity as you fight, Harold admits with a shrug. The really fun part was when he activated another bombardment weapon, this one properly in orbit, and she used him as the weapon to break it. She what? She grabbed me, spotted my weapon in orbit, and then hurled me into it at just the right angle to break off the weapon of mass destruction I had illegally installed on a communications satellite. Good aim on that woman, Daiju says suddenly among them, and staring down the barrel of a pistol that Harold has whipped out when he woodwalked in with Terry as his beacon. All right, I know when I'm not wanted. Then he is gone. Well, that answers the question to how much of the astral forest is paying attention to this. Yeah, I want to shut them out, but can't they send something physical they can watch through so they leave you alone? Let you think on your own? Duma asks. Then moments later, a necklace made of dark purple beads appears around Terry's neck. They said yes, Terry adds unnecessarily. You going to bring in the fathoms for this? After the initial introductions, if Uncle Hoffet isn't, well, Terry trails off. What have you been told about him? Velocity prompts. He's not a bad person, it's just that he's supposedly intense, really focused on what he does and willing to fight over something at the drop of a hat, but not like someone with rage issues. Apparently he's in control of his anger. He's just really intense, Terry says with a shrug of honest confusion. I'm having a hard time imagining it, to be honest. Someone really angry who acts angry but isn't controlled by the anger is weird. It takes all sorts, Harold replies. We're coming up on the main base of the conservation effort, Dumaya says. Well, I guess it's my show soon, Terry says nervously. The promised package is exactly at the correct coordinates. It is everything it was said to be, and as the teams sweep and scan it, the only thing out of place is a single piece of paper, folded in two and resting on a data slate containing the full manifest of everything. It's a handwritten letter. To my newest friends, welcome to the galaxy, and may you all eat well. More to come. Just please tell me where, and I will see you fed, happy, and whole. With love, Salsharin, aka Uncle Love, Hart, the shuttle docks with the chain breaker and the airlock cycles, then opens to allow Observer Wu and an escort of 2 bodyguards into the chain breaker. Sir, good to see you in person, Pukey says with a salute that's returned. Captain Schmidt, I apologize for the delay. We intended to be here several days ago at the latest. Then we might have missed each other. We arrived late yesterday, barely 10 hours before you did. Yes, and speaking of why are you here exactly? Do you not chase bounties? Is there a particularly dangerous criminal in the area? Not that we're aware of, but several bounties are being paid out here, and a fair amount of our junior crew are actually Albrith citizens, so they're visiting home even as we speak. Pukey explains and then gestures to the side. I've basically warned everyone that Jawbone, our most well-used conference and briefing room, will be yours to use while you're here. This way, please. Jawbone? Its biggest decorations are the jawbones of a pair of massive creatures we hunted early on. Our first field test of the pop guns to be accurate. I've seen those. Why on earth would you need the unholy child of an elephant gun, anti-material rifle, and an outright cannon to fight? Carnex, imagine a chrome Godzilla minus the nuclear breath, and you're generally correct. A mated pair got too close to some towns, and we took them down. But they were so big and tough, it took 2 shots apiece to drop them. I've seen what those weapons do to starships. Are you telling me that you've encountered animals that are stronger still? I have, and you're about to get a general idea of the size as we have an entire conference room with the jawbones of those monsters in it for decoration. Pukey says, I can't but notice that you seem to have a new arm, Observer Wu says as he indicates the mildly glowing limb. Oh, sorry, is this better? Pukey asks, and suddenly he has a massively reinforced monstrosity for a left arm. And the reason you have an arm with a fist larger than your head? Observer Wu asks. Something new I'm trying out. My new shoulder socket is reinforced and designed to work with multiple arms. This way I can switch them out mid-fight. This one is basically just for punching things so hard that a pop gun is the only handheld step up. I'm not certain that the ability to literally uppercut someone into the stratosphere is all that useful. You'd be truly surprised how tough some people are. I've spent time with a man who literally thinks a supersonic blow is a good start and not a guaranteed finish to a fight. Observer Wu remarks. He's got the right idea of things. I lost my first arm to a drunken idiot with a plasma sword, and my eye to a woman with a degenerative disease killing her brain. My second arm was badly damaged on Octron Spin, and although repaired, was destroyed on Albrith, as was the first cybernetic eye. And how did that happen? There was a dangerous field around this planet created by cognito-hazard level threats. Not the worst ones the Undaunted have encountered, but bad ones. Ones that, if you spoke the wrong words, they would hit you with a blast of lightning. And if you lingered too long in a place they had hit, they would hit you with a lesser but still brutal attack for good measure. That's what got me. It also cooked off the ammunition I had on me at the time, and let me tell you, your eye and arm shorting out as your weapon detonates while you're being tased is no fun. I'd imagine not. It got worse as we started to narrow down what was causing all this. Just looking at the things causes most peoples to develop short-term memory problems and forget them. But us humans? Brain aneurysms. Bike got really close to biting it then, Pukey says as they reach a room labeled Jawbone, and even as Observer Wu is processing the barely avoided death of one of the Undaunted, he then pauses as he takes in the massive flowing columns of ivory lying flat on their sides with shelves and furniture carved into them. Crude in some places, elegantly in others, and that was just the beginning to the many trophies hanging about, laying about and set about the chamber.